nobody has to like the same stuff. Like that's the cool thing about comics is there's something for everybody. And just because one person likes it doesn't mean the next person's gonna like it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Lounging, son.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and as always, I have my lovely co-host Jen for another episode of Thought Balloon. And today we're going to be talking about must-read books. You literally
And
just
if the must-read books are suitable for everyone, like is there a
thank you,
book
thank
that
you.
can be perfect for all the readers out there?
Yeah, I'm assuming you got the idea for this based on your IG story with how many people do not like Watchmen or have not read Watchmen. I'm assuming that's what kind of kicked this off.
Yeah,
And
but not just Watchmen. I got a lot of different answers, and I was like, you know what? That's a good subject.
yeah, I mean, there is some stuff that people tell me is really good, and I don't necessarily like. I can understand the Watchmen. I mean, I don't agree with most of the people that said it. But I can understand it. It's a heavy read. Like it's not even a book. Like I can usually read a 12 issue story. Like let's say Mr. Miracle or Vision or whatever. Like I can read that in one sitting. I can't read Watchmen in one sitting. I've tried, and it's too heavy, you know. Um, but I think it's not only is it important historically in comic books, like it really changed the face of comic books and what you could do because it was a deconstruction of superheroes, really, you know. It's funny that so many people said that they couldn't get through it or that they just didn't like it. Um, I would say like just break it up into quarters, like read 3 issues at a time, even one issue at a time, because I think you'd get a different. I think you'd be able to appreciate if you're really like looking for it and analyzing both the writing and the art in that book. I don't see how anybody could like not.
I
I don't
tried so many times though. Like I picked it up. I have it in my bookshelf, and I tried. I opened it like many, many times, more than 10 times, and every time I doze off. Like it's not even I don't even try. Like I try so hard to like it, but not just like it, just to finish it. And I'm not able to do it. But I noticed that I think I have a hard time with Alan Moore's writing because I read V for Vendetta, and although I understand why it's a very great comic, it was very painful for me to read. Like legit painful. Getting to the end was painful for me. But I still understand why it's important. It's just I don't think I'm this type of reader because yeah, it was just painful, and I think I'm not into his writing and into his style. And it makes it very difficult as a comic fan because I'm like, those comics are considered as the greatest comics one of the greatest comics of all time. Like Watchmen and
Mhm.
V for Vendetta, they are very great. I can't get it.
What about Saga of Swamp Thing?
Yeah, Swamp Thing was great. It took me a while though to get into it. Like it took me a couple of chapters to really get into it. But I'm still interested in reading more because because I got it's an edition with like it's volume 1, but it's like I think there's like 3 volumes in it. I don't know. And I'm still interested in.
There's 9 issues in there. I think you have book one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Book 1, exactly. Um, so yeah, Swamp Thing was interesting, but it took me like a long, long time to get it like really into the story. But I think it was easier for me because it's a bit more like it's a creature. It's not like V for Vendetta, which is it's I don't know how to explain it, but like Swamp Thing is a bit more. I felt that the
Yeah,
writing was different.
I mean it's definitely different. I think that now like also these comic books were written way before you were born.
Yeah.
Only shortly only shortly before I was born. You know, like Swamp Thing came out in '84, Watchmen was '85, and V for Vendetta. I don't know the exact year, so I'm not going to say it. So I can understand like some writings dated. Like my brother has a hard time with Watchmen. He likes it, but he had a hard time getting through it too. And
But you
it's
know
just
what's
like
funny? It's that when I posted that stories on Instagram, I got more than one people. I got at least 3, 4 people out of like the 20 that answered that said that they disliked Saga. And that's not an old book, you know, that's a really modern book. And they hated it. Like they were saying like I can't get through it as much as I can get through Watchmen, you know? And they were like young people, like people my age, you know? So I thought it was really interesting because Saga is also considered like a very great series and one of the greatest like modern storyline that there is. And I thought it was very interesting to see that I don't believe that there's a must read comic for everyone. Although like we have great ones and we have comics that made history and that changed the way that comics are made.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still interesting to see how like some people get a different point of view out of those storyline, you know?
Yeah, it is weird. I think that I mean, I don't know. That was the first time I've ever really seen people like, oh, I don't like Watchmen. Oh, I can't get through it. I was like, holy shit, that
Because
is a
you
lot
can't
of
say
people.
it. You can't say it. That's the thing. Like I felt so I was like I need to get this off my chest because I was looking at my Watchmen on my shelf and I was like I need to tell someone that I hate it. Like I need to tell someone that I can't get through it. So I was like, you know what? Let's use Instagram. Like let's see because most of the time when I post something like that there's always like a bunch of people surprising me. So I was like, let's try, let's see. And I was like people were answering my stories, but they were also sending me private messages saying like, I can't say this out loud. Like if I say this, I get cursed. I get like people are yelling at me. People are like, and I was like, I feel that like you can't say out loud that you can't read Watchmen or you disliked V for Vendetta or like whatever. You can't say it out loud. You can never say it out loud because they are considered such great comics that it's like impossible to dislike them. You know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, well, for me, I don't really care. I'll say it, even if it's like I feel like people are gonna talk shit because like I kind of like to argue, so I'll argue my point. You know, like it doesn't bother me. I think you should have done it on Twitter. I think that would have been hilarious to
Oh, I
see.
would have been like blocked or something.
I mean, you know, I don't know what kind of comments you would have got, but I mean, like I said, I can understand it. Watchmen is a very heavy book. Like I've only read it, and I read a lot of books over and over again. You know, that are considered like classics. Dark Knight Returns. I can't even tell you how many times I've read that. But that's like completely different. That's way easier to get into than Watchmen. Like I got the, you know, DC puts out those absolute editions that are like
Yeah.
really tall. So I'm like, oh shit, they have a Watchmen one. It's still available and it's only $100. So with my discount, I'm like, dude, that's only $60. Like I should get that edition. Like I really like Watchmen, and I think it was only the third time I've read it, and this is last year. So I was like reading it. I'm like, fuck, dude, this is a lot to read. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like I gotta put this down. And I not disliking it, just like it's just very text heavy. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that like you can't not pay attention to what's going on in the art either. Like you really have to look at the
There's a
scenes
lot like
because
to take it.
because Dave Gibbons is also putting in shit that because Alan Moore's scripts are thick. You know what I mean? Like he is very descriptive in his scripts. I think that like maybe some of his newer stuff. Have you read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
I tried.
Oh God, dude.
That's the thing. I think
Okay.
I have a problem with Alan Moore, and
Yeah.
I really hate that about me because I really like I want to love him so much. I want to like be a part of this. I want to love him and say how incredible he is, but in all honesty, and it's the first time I'm saying this out loud, like I just can't get through his writing. It's not for me. I don't get it. Maybe I should try reading it in French, like with a translation or something. Maybe that would be easier. But like, it's very heavy, like
It is. It is.
too heavy for me.
I mean, I won't say it, but actually, yeah, I will say it. But some people have a problem with Grant Morrison and his writing. Like Mario has said it to me. My brother has said it to me where he's read some of Grant Morrison's stuff and he's like, I don't get it. Like I don't get why this like not that he doesn't get why people like it so much, but he's just like it's like and he get like you like with Watchmen, right? You're like, oh man, I hate myself that I don't like it, that I don't get it, right? my brother's the same way with Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol.
Mm,
I think he read because that's considered like a Vertigo classic,
yeah.
and I read it, right, and it's funny because he told me his opinion and I had never read it, or I think I read the first 4 issue story arc in single issues, but I recently read the thick books, right, and I called him after I read book 1. I was like, dude, why don't you like this? This is awesome. Like, what aren't you getting? But I guess it's like, like everybody has different tastes in what they're reading, and just like you get a different experience when reading something, you can just like be like turned off by the writing style, right? Like it's like with if any art, like some people could really love a painting and then other people
Yeah.
are like, what the fuck is that? Like I don't like it. So I
But
don't
it's
think you
painful. It's
I know.
painful not to be able to.
I
I don't
mean,
like. I don't. I just don't. And the thing is that you said I like to argue. Like if I don't like something, I like to argue. But the thing is that I don't have any arguments. I just don't like it.
yeah.
It's not like compatible with me, and it really breaks my heart because I want to like it so badly. And I'm really happy because I really love Sandman, and I was really afraid to dislike it. I was really afraid to add the Sandman to the books that I can't read, but it turned out that I really loved it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, it was a relief. I was like, oh, thank God it's good.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? That's funny that you mentioned Sandman because I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about Sandman.
I've never heard
I
anybody
think that I
either.
think that might be the one book that is universally loved because it has so. I mean, you haven't finished all of it, right?
No, I read
Okay.
the two first volumes,
Okay,
so
so like overall, I would say that like there's so many different genres that find their way in there. Like there's like a really cool like serial killer story. I can't remember which volume it's in. It's kind of a blur to me, but I think Sandman you can recommend to anybody. Like I would say the first arc is kind of not the best entry point because it's
mhm.
very like DC Comics tied into like other characters, and it's I think even Neil Gaiman kind of like I think I've heard somewhere that he had comments about the first one and how he's not as happy with that, and that like the second volume would be really the one to start with. I think I don't think I don't think you should ever feel bad, and I don't think anybody should ever make anybody feel bad
Yeah.
if they don't like something. You know what I mean? Because like then you could potentially turn off somebody from being a comic book reader, right? Like what if they're just getting into comic books and you recommend them a book and they're like, "Oh, I don't really like it. Is there something else?" And then you're like, "What are you, stupid? How do you
Yeah.
not how do you not like that?" Like I'll joke around with customers, but it's not about like the classics, right? Or the must reads. If it's a new book that came out and they're not going to pick it up, I'm like, "Oh, you just don't like good books. That's why you're not getting it. But you'll buy this shit?" I'm like, "Why would you buy that book? That book's fucking the book's trash." But it's usually just like one of the monthly comic books that I'll do that with. But Saga is not something I've heard people dislike except Mario. He I think he just doesn't like Brian K. Vaughan's writing. He said that it's always like every issue's always got to have some shocking moment, and he's
Yeah.
like, so I've heard that from Mario, and then when I went back and read Saga not that long after him telling me that, I was like, I kind of see it, but I don't dislike that. You know what I
I
mean? Like,
I see it too, and it's funny because one of the guy at my comic store dislikes Saga. He works at a comic store, and he was the one who recommended most of the comics. Like he recommended like half of my bookshelves. One day we had a conversation, and because we had like we have a similar taste, right, in comic books. That's why like he's my go-to guy for recommendations. And one day he told me like, you know what? I think Saga is overrated, and I was like, what? Okay, and I was shocked, but I was like, all right, I get it. Like you're entitled to your opinion, of course. And I know that this guy, he will always respect my opinion for disliking classic because he understands like he's working in the comic world and he understands that not every book is for everyone. And it's a conversation I always had with him, and it's very interesting that like some of his customers undervalue his opinion because he dislikes Saga, and it's like this guy has great recommendations and not just classic stuff. He can pick a book out of nowhere and tell you like this, it will be good for you, you know? And people undervalue his opinion because he dislikes one of the greatest comics of all time. And I think that's very wrong in the industry to like think like that. Like you can dislike a comic that's supposedly a must read for everyone and still have great taste in comic.
Yeah, I mean, I all the time. I mean, I wish I could remember. I feel like there was a book recently that I read, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't see the hype. I don't see why. And it happens sometimes with like, I guess it's more recent stuff that comes out, like where people are like, man, this book is amazing, and I'm like, no, it's really not. You know, like there's way
Recent
better
stuff, I
stuff.
have a problem with recent stuff. Like, I don't trust people's opinion anymore for new series. Like, series that only has like 5, 6 issues, for example. I
I
don't
mean, you
trust
trust
other.
mine, right?
Yes, yes. But
Okay,
like social media, you know, like this
right.
is the greatest book of all time, the new greatest book, the new this is gonna like make the classics and I don't trust them anymore because most like 9 times out of 10, 5 issues are good and then it just, you know,
Falls
like the
off a
sixth
cliff.
one is just disgusting.
Yeah.
That's why modern books like you need some time to a comic book I feel needs some time to build up a great storyline, and it's difficult to like after the couple first issues that came out to say this is the new classic. Like you can't say that. You don't
See,
know.
right, and I would agree for the most part. I think that I think someone like myself, or someone like Dylan, or my manager Nick, somebody that's been reading comic books for like 20 plus years, I think you can kind of see when something's special. You kind of get that vibe when you read like a first issue of a series, and you're like,
Hmm.
holy shit! Like I think this is gonna be. I don't say this is a classic in the making. I'll say like I think this is gonna be a classic. Like Kieran Gillen and Asad Rivich just launched Eternals at Marvel. Holy shit! Like that first issue was my favorite book that came out that week. It's
I
like
have a
that.
question then for you. Is it easier for you to judge this way a comic book from Marvel and DC than an independent comic? Because most of the time Marvel and DC have like a very simple like they have their stories are like similar, and then when there's something unique it peaks up so and in the comics it's always like there's always it's so different all the time, so it's a little bit difficult to judge,
Um,
or is it all the
for
same?
for me, just personally for me, I would say it's kind of all the same. Marvel and DC, when something's different, obviously. You know what I mean? Like when Hickman launched the X-Men books, House of
Hmm.
X and Powers of 10, right? Like I read that first issue, and I would say I'm rarely blown away by something when it comes out now with the first issue. After those 12 issues, I knew. I was like, this is going to be one of the greatest X-Men and Marvel runs in the history of the company. Like I know after that 12 issue, I'm like, what he's setting up is something we haven't seen. It's something really special. So I knew that. Eternals #1 that came out a couple weeks ago. After reading it, I was like, holy shit! I think he's going to do kind of what Hickman's doing with X-Men, but he's doing it with Eternals. And Eternals isn't really like a big property. So he's got a lot more room to work. He's got a lot more room to be creative and to kind of do something really unique with the book.
Hmm.
And the art was phenomenal. But some stuff is like you don't know right away, right? You don't know. Well, I don't know if I would have known, but like Thor by Jason Aaron, I would say is one of the greatest runs of comic books history. But I was late to the game, so I picked it up when Volume 1 and 2 were out, and I read both, and then I knew I knew after Volume 1, I'm like, holy shit, this is this is amazing. This is going to be one of the best. This is going to be probably one of the best Thor books, and then now it's one of the greatest. Like it's easy to recommend to people. DC tends to do one-off stories, so it's a little bit easier with DC. Like they did a series called Wonder Woman Dead Earth. So good. Like I even think that you could read it, and I think that you might like it. The art is really cool. I mean, well, I don't know if the artist is either something that you would like. Daniel Warren Johnson, are you familiar with his work?
I don't know.
He did a book called Extremity at Image. It's two
Oh yeah.
volumes.
I haven't read Extremity, but I saw it. It's interesting art, but I can't say I love
Okay.
it.
Okay. So yeah, if you like the art, I would say Wonder Woman Dead are amazing. And I think it's gonna, in my opinion, I think it has the potential. I don't know that it's for everybody. That's why I wouldn't say I think it'll be a perennial story like a Dark Knight Returns. But Image, like with Image, I feel like I know after the first issue whether or not I don't want to say waste my time, whether or not I want to invest in it.
Hmm.
Bitterroot number one, I knew off top.
Yeah.
I read that 2 months before it came out. I read it when, Image had sent me the PDF, and I knew it was going to be something awesome. Look, it won an Eisner. Like
Yeah.
I knew from the beginning with that.
I just find
Fire.
it really difficult. For example, Monstress, I praised Monstress so much and I still love it. But now there are I think the fourth volume or something like that. I still haven't read it because
Fifth volume's out.
fifth, yeah. So you see, I stopped like getting into it after the third volume. But I remember the first volume for me was like life changing. It was extraordinary. The art, the writing, everything was phenomenal for me. And now it's like you said, the fifth volume, and I'm just like, meh, you know. That's why it's really hard for me to get into this like new classic vibe. Like it's a new must read for everyone because most of the time I get tired if it gets past like 3 or 4 volume.
Yeah.
It might just be me as a reader, but I'm sure I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one. I think all readers feel like that. That's why, I've told you before, I don't get it with Monsters. I
Yeah, I
just,
know.
I don't, and don't get me wrong, writing, she's not a bad writer. She's a great writer. The art is, to me, the thing that attracts me the most to the book. I've read the 4 volumes. I read volume one, and then volume two wasn't even out yet. So I read the first volume, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then, but I wasn't like, oh shit, this is amazing. And then I didn't read it again, and then I powered through all 4 volumes almost a year ago. I think like right before the pandemic, right? And I was like, even like volume one, I liked better the second read, but then volume two, three, and four, I'm like, oh, God, dude, this is kind of a chore to get through this. I just it's not for me and it's not for everybody. That's why some
Yeah.
people when they come in the store and they ask for a fantasy book, I have to like I kind of like because we in our shop it's easier. Like if you've shopped there before, we scan your graphic novel into we have a graphic novel book club, right? So you get 20% of the cover as a
Hmm.
credit to your account. And so we can look through your entire history and it never goes away. So if you bought a book 7 years ago, it's in there. So like I can tell by like their reading. If they're a new reader, I won't give them Monsters because it's just like I don't want to make them not want to read comic books. And
Yeah.
I could see how that book might like you might read that and you're like, oh fuck, I can't do it. I can't do it. This is too much. And that's it sounds kind of like how you feel about like Alan Moore's writing, like that's kind of how I feel about her. Like I wanted to like it, but you know what? It's okay. It's like we don't have to. Nobody has to like the same stuff. Like that's the cool thing about comics is there's something for everybody. And just because one person likes it doesn't mean the next person's gonna like it. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And nobody should ever make somebody feel dumb, stupid, or like just you can. I don't think you should like shame somebody for not liking a quote unquote classic because fuck, dude, there's classics in literature, in novels and
Yeah.
stuff, and I've read them, and I'm like, why is this a big deal? I don't really care for this story, And then there's stories that like Once and Future King that's not necessarily not probably not everybody has read. I read that in ninth grade in high school, right? And like I liked it, but I probably would like it better now. And that's another thing is that as you get older and your kind of taste change, like for me, I say it a lot with art. When I was younger, people would say, "Oh man, this artist is amazing," and I would look and I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, no, it's like I don't like it at all." Like Paul Pope, I wouldn't say that I thought his art was bad, but I was not a fan of it when I was a teenager. Now I love it. I think he's amazing. I think he's one of the best artists in comics. And even though he doesn't do a lot of stuff, and it's rare when we get to see his art, I think he's fantastic. And so, like, I would say, like, for me, it's more on the art side.
Mm-hmm.
that I like a lot of time. Like I would not tell people that I didn't like an artist because I'm like, fuck, they're gonna think they're gonna think I just don't like good art, you know? Writing for me, it's I haven't found it as much with writing, except more of the modern stuff. I see the Instagram stories of people and I see the books they post and like they'll say it's not a classic story, but it'll just be a new series and like, oh my god, it's amazing, and I'm like, oh my god, that's fucking garbage. That's a garbage book. It is not good at all. There is a lot of fucking trash
Yeah, of
comics, in
course.
my opinion, that come out now, and mostly Marvel, DC. There's some of the Image stuff that people are
Some
like,
of
oh
the
my,
Image stuff is not good.
yeah,
Like,
they'll
let's
be,
be honest, some of them
yeah,
are really not good.
and they'll be like, "Oh my God, it's so good," and I'm like, "What do you like about it?" There's nothing like it's doesn't it. There's no like
It's
it
not
doesn't.
new. It's
Yeah,
the same thing.
it's not saying anything. It's just like a basic story that somebody lucked out. They knew somebody that worked at Image, and they got the book published. Like it's not a good book. There's
Yeah.
nothing about it. Yeah, I think that going back to Saga and Watchmen, I think those are probably two series that I've heard the most, I would say the most conflicting in terms of classics, but I don't think that for the most part, like I don't know, like what else would you name as like a must read that you think that
Mouse.
okay.
Mouse is my all-time must read. I will never stop recommending it. It's life-changing. And but that's I know that not everyone will appreciate it, but I think everyone should. But it's okay if you don't like it. It's just for me, Mouse was really Mouse is an important read.
Yeah, for me, like, I don't even know what I would say as much. Like if you were to ask me, like, I mean, Dylan and I talked about it on last week's podcast. We did Swamp Thing, book one.
Yeah.
And I would say that's my favorite Alan Moore work. People can, and I'll argue that too with people. Like, I have no problem. Like, I think that of all the books that he's written, Swamp Thing is my favorite. I've read it multiple times, more than any of his other books. It's the most accessible, I would say, for people. It's the easiest to read. I don't want to say that it's like it's a dumbed down version of him, but it's like it's just an easier entry point from the first issue that he writes. It's easier to jump into that world than say Watchmen or V for Vendetta or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's pretty easy. I'm about to start reading his Promethea book. That's kind of his take on like a Wonder Woman archetype, right? It's been recommended to me for years, but I just for whatever reason it's I never read it. But and it's funny, like Brian K. Vaughan. I hear some people saying that on like Why the Last Man. Like I personally love that book. I don't see why people fucking dislike that. I've heard people dislike Paper Girls. I mean,
But I can see why people like Why the Last Man, Paper Girls. I can understand even Saga. Like if you say that you don't like it and you give me like the reason, most of the time I agree. Like most of the time, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I don't agree personally, but I can see why you think that because it is true that for a certain point of view, it is true, especially for Why the Last Man. Like I heard a lot of things and I was like, don't disagree with that. It's kind of close to be accurate.
yeah. And then like I think there's also books that should be must reads that people don't pay attention to. I could list Marvel and DC books that I think that you as somebody that I mean you hate them, right? For
Yeah, I
lack
hate
of a
them. It's okay.
I mean you hate them. So, but there's plenty of books I could give you and I know you would like it. Without a
For sure.
doubt. Like there's no doubt in my mind that I could give you the book and you would like it. Like the Lois Lane book that I told you
Yeah.
that I thought you should read. I think that like while Superman is in it a little bit, I think that it is a great book and it's accessible for somebody that's not super into the superhero stuff. I mean, Swamp Thing is a DC book and you like that. You enjoyed that, right?
Yeah,
And
but that's
then
the thing. It's not a superhero book per se, Swamp Thing. It's not the same vibe as Superman or whatever, it's a different type of vibe, which
yeah.
this is what I really liked about it. And I think that's what like we can say whatever we want about like this book is a great classic or whatever, but it all depends of what you prefer as a genre. And Mouse for me is a must read and is a big classic, mostly because nine times out of ten, when I was with people or was shopping for books, Most of the time, people who told me read Mouse, it's really great, are people who never read any other comics in their life.
Hmm.
They got their entry point into comics with Mouse because it's such an important read that it was recommended many, many times over by people who are not familiar with comic books, who don't like comic books, people who like comic books. It just, it's a subject and it's a style and it's information that everyone should read. So it helps to like put everyone together around with the same comic. And that's why for me, Mouse is a great classic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I want to bring up what's considered a classic, what's considered like universally loved in comics that I was very late to the game was Love and Rockets.
Yeah,
I know you started reading some of it, right?
I read the four, but I don't know what edition I have. It's like I think it's the four first stories, I think.
Was it a kind of like a reddish on the spine?
No, I can show you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Those were all the four that I read.
Oh, you read all those? Okay,
Yeah.
so you read Maggie the Mechanic. I saw you, The Girl from Hoppers. I can't.
Heartbreak Soup and Perla La Loca.
Okay, so you read three of Jaime's books and one of Gilbert's. I knew about that from a young age, and for whatever reason, I didn't read it. And then my brother is like, "Dude, you got to read this." He read through everything. I love it. I know there's people out there that it's not for them. You know.
Not all of I did like I gotta be honest with you, I loved it, but not all of it.
Which
Like
one
not
did
all four.
you didn't like Maggie the Mechanic probably too much, right?
No. I think like you said, I preferred The Girl from Hoppers.
Yeah.
That's the one you recommended.
Right.
That's the one I loved. But like I really enjoyed it because I love Terry Moore, and I know that he's really people are conflicted about their stories, especially Strangers in Paradise. Especially young people are conflicted about it.
Hmm.
But like all the time when I said I love Terry Moore, I love Strangers in Paradise, people were saying you should read
Love and Rockets.
Love and Rockets, yes, because he got a lot of his, well, it's the same style basically. It's the
Oh, I
same,
mean, he's super influenced by them.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same type of stories, and I was like, I can so much see it into it. Like I
Hmm.
read the books, and I was like, wow, I can see the inspiration everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Gilbert and Jaime Hernandez are like master cartoonists. I mean, if you look in Maggie the Mechanic and Heartbreak Soup, right? Those are their first stories ever published, and their art and their lettering is it's like they had been in the business for
Yeah.
fucking years. Like they came in so strong with so much talent, and I would say that well, like, and that's why I said read Girl from Hoppers. Like, get through Maggie the Mechanic because that technically came out first, but Girl from Hoppers is where things really like take off. And my brother told me the same thing. He's like, you probably won't like this, but you have to get the book after it. You have to get through this to get to that. Like, I think that should be considered, in my opinion, that should be considered a must read because that also, like, Love and Rockets is largely, I would say, one of the main reasons that a lot of women got into comic books
Hmm.
because they had like they
It's only
those
female
like
characters,
those
or
got and they fucking and they don't over sexualize them, right? And they
yeah.
make them like they just feel so real. Like like by the time you read all of it, you really feel like a connection to Maggie and Hopi. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like you really like you hope for them to be like together because like they go through their ups and downs. I mean, I'm current with everything. Like I'm getting the magazines that come out. I think they come out 3 times a year or something like that. I think there was only one issue that came out last year, which kind of sucks. But that should be considered a must read for comic book fans because I think it's got something for everybody. You know, like they do their weird stories too, where it's like really it's out there. Especially in Heartbreak Soup, I think there's some like really fucking like weird shit that goes on in there. But I'm in like Jaime's is I gravitate more towards Jaime's stories than like Gilbert's. Like Gilbert goes on and he does his like Palomar stories, which you only have one, but like he stays with those characters like Luba and all them for like I mean he's still dealing with them in like the new stuff. But like that's also really cool because like I like the slice of life stuff And if we had to break it down into like genres, slice of life, I would say Love and Rockets. Horror, I don't know what I would say would be like a must read for horror. Like I don't read a ton of horror stuff, but I might say Swamp Thing. Superhero stuff, it's like for
It's
me,
hard.
like I would say I might even say Dark Knight Returns would be a good like one-off story that should be like a perennial, you know. The other genres are a little bit harder for me to pick, but I think that for the most part, people love Dark Knight Returns. I don't think people have a lot of problems with that. Love and Rockets, I've never really met anybody that didn't like it, but there's not a whole ton of people that
Yeah.
I know. That's why, like, especially when I saw you with Strangers in Paradise, I'm like, you have to read this. Did like overall, like, what was your take on Love and Rockets after you read all of those? Like, do you want to read more?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not because I didn't like it. I really appreciate it, but I didn't. Like I said, I didn't appreciate all of it, and I feel like it's like some stories were really great and some stories were not. You know, for me
Hmm.
personally. So it was like sometimes a hit and a miss, and I don't know if I would continue like gambling like that. You know, like
Fair enough.
picking a story, but I do get it. I do get why it's important, especially if I like stuff like Terry Moore, because Terry Moore wouldn't exist without Love and Rockets, right?
Hmm.
So I do understand it is, and um, The Girl from Operas was really great. It was really fun to read.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and what's cool too is like now like the past, Jaime Hernandez there's Love Bunglers where it's a hardcover that reprints like just like that story. I would check out Love Bunglers. I think that's really good. And the last one with Maggie and Hopi that he did, that
Hmm.
one is phenomenal as well. I mean, he has another hardcover that came out after, but it's with Tonta, and that's a different character that you haven't met yet. So I wouldn't get that. But if you got those other two, I think that you'd like that because it's just one story.
Yeah,
It's not jumping back and forth with like a little
I
story
think that's
here.
the thing, though. I think I would have preferred if it was one story instead of like jumping and different short stories, just because I was sometimes getting like confused or like getting really into a story and then the next one I wouldn't like it, so I would be like, eh. I would rather have like one long story, but the characters were really great. I really love the characters.
I don't know if I have anything else to say about must reads. Do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. I think we had a cool discussion.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would be curious to know what people consider a must read. Who's listening to us have a great must read recommendation that they think everyone should read. Um,
I mean, I could go on.
yeah,
I just know that you don't read DC and Marvel, and for me, there's like a lot. Like I would say for me, the best like Batman story is Long Halloween, but other people would probably say Batman Year One by Frank Miller, or Dark Knight Returns, right? But to me, Halloween is a better story.
mm-hmm.
Superman, I would say Secret Identity is a good one, or All Star Superman. But again, like I know that not everybody is into superhero stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I feel like nowadays more newer fans coming into comics don't gravitate towards the superheroes, so they gravitate towards the indie stuff. You
yeah, I
know,
think so too.
I think most people that should be on their must reads is pretty much all of Vertigo, early Vertigo. I think everybody should read. You know, like Hellblazer, it's good, but it's kind of dated because I read
Yeah,
it not that long ago, and it's like it's really a product of its time. I think Sandman obviously is
Sandman is a great
timeless. It's
classic. I want to
timeless.
know if someone dislikes Sandman. If you dislike Sandman, I want you to write it in the comments or something. I want to know if there's someone out there who dislikes Sandman, and I won't judge. I just want to know because I've never heard anyone who dislikes Sandman before, and I want to know if it exists.
Yeah, that would be. I would love to hear if somebody doesn't like that because I've never come across somebody that doesn't like Sandman.
Yeah,
Um,
me either.
but yeah, I mean, you know, everybody. I think everybody has different opinions on what a must read is. You know, like I'm sure that you may even think that something's a must read and I don't. I feel like maybe not though. I feel like everything you like I like too,
Yeah,
but there's stuff I like you don't like. So it's different. You know what I mean? But I mean you have really good taste in comics. I don't think that you've read something or that I've seen you read before me that I didn't like except Monsters. That's probably the only But I think you kind of are not as impressed with it anymore. So now
Exactly.
you're more on my side.
But that happens often with me. I would I would read the first 2 or 3 volumes and I will love them, and then after three, I feel like the story would kind of peak. And it's the same for TV shows or movies. Like at some point, you gotta stop. Like
Yeah, some
at
stuff goes
some
too
point,
long.
you don't have enough material to keep going on. Like if a great story knows how to where to stop,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's the problem. Often they don't know where to stop.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that a lot of my favorite series, I don't think 60 issues is a long run, and that's 10 volumes, right? Of if it's a six issue arcs.
Yeah.
So like 60 is I think is a solid number to end at. I think that like Scalped, one of my favorite series,
Hmm.
is 60 issues. I think Why the Last Man, 60 issues. So a lot, I think that's like a sweet spot, but that not everybody can get that far without losing people. Because
Yeah.
sometimes sometimes your story doesn't need that many issues. And I find that a lot with like in terms of I find it more with people staying on like a Marvel or DC book. I'm like, dude, you need to go. Like I don't want to like there's this guy Dan Slott that wrote he wrote Spider-Man for 10 years. And to me it was like 9 years too long. Like you did it got to the point where like I only kept getting it because I liked the character and
Yeah.
I could not I would read every issue and I'm like I fucking hate this. Why am I still buying it? Like I don't even understand. But I like when you said that people are judging Saga, I think it's not even fair to judge Saga as a classic until it's done.
Yeah.
To me you can't call something a classic until you have the full story. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like and I think like I'll say Vision is a classic. I think what Tom King did with Vision is a modern classic. I think
Hmm.
his Mr. Miracle is a modern classic. I think Strange Adventures, which he's writing now, has the potential to be a modern classic because what he's doing, I think Vision, when he wrote that, he changed how people could do a superhero comic in this modern age.
Hmm.
Much like Alan Moore did with Watchmen, what he did with Vision was groundbreaking to me. What he did talking about mental health with Mr. Miracle is insane. I mean, I know you probably
Yeah.
haven't read, right?
No, Mr. Miracle, I loved it.
Oh, you did read it. Okay, so
Yeah.
you do like some stuff. All right.
And I
I
loved it. I
Yeah,
loved the Mr.
I
Miracle.
think if you read Strange Adventures, it has a little bit more of the DC superheroes in it, but it's more what it's about. Like I just read the new issue. It hasn't come out yet, but I read it and I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like I haven't read Rorschach because I just don't think anybody should touch Alan Moore's Watchmen characters. I think they need to leave it alone because because of how he got screwed over. And that's another thing that I hate, like when people like, oh man, this is so great. Like and I feel like people are hypocrites because they talk about like wanting creators' rights like to mean something or creators to be treated properly, but then you're buying Rorschach, so you're kind of a hypocrite at that point, to me. I'm not judging anybody. I mean Dylan's reading it and I talked shit in the beginning, but I kind of left it alone. But it's true though. It's like he in his contract, the rights were supposed to go back to him once it was out of print. But their loophole was they just kept putting it in print so that
Hmm.
it never went back to him. And to me, that pisses me off as a fan because like to think about what comic books we could have got from Alan Moore at DC. Like I think he wrote a 2 issue Superman or whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. It's amazing. It's a classic. Like it's one of the best Superman stories ever, and it's only 2 issues. But like that's why I won't read Rorschach, and I'm sure the writing's good, but also that whole Tom King thing.
Hmm.
I have that in the back of my mind when I read his books now. I was like, dude, you're such
It's
an like
always there.
I'm like reading. I'm like, dude, you're such an idiot. Why did you open your mouth on Twitter? Like, why did you do it? You know. But so I think like I don't know why I circled back, but I think that you asked how do I know if something's a classic, and I think that it's easier to know when it is done. It's not as easy to know when you're reading it in the beginning. I can say this has the potential to be something special, but like after reading Vision twice now, I know it's a classic. I know that
Yeah.
it's something that should always. I think anybody can read it. And like we talked, I think Dylan and I mentioned you when we did the Vision episode. Like I think that you would enjoy it. I
Yeah.
don't. It bridges the gap between like indie and superhero fans to
But
where both.
that's what we need, I feel like a great modern classic would be something that would break the mold. It would break this continuity, especially with Marvel and DC. It would break that going on and on and on and on. And a new great classic, a modern great classic, would be something different, something new, something fresh. And I think from what I heard, I think Vision would be that. Like Vision
Oh,
is something different.
it pulls on
It's
your
on my
hearts,
list.
and it pulls on your heartstrings, man. It really does. Like, I mean, I think it's just amazing. I mean, Tom Kane, when I think, like I said, he really just gets like the human condition. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, he really can get into someone's head, and he puts so much of himself and his own feelings about
Hmm.
stuff. Like, you have PTSD and stuff like that, or mental health, and Strange Adventures. I would say is more the PTSD aspect of it. I think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I need to read it when it's complete. It's hard for me to kind of know what his deal is until it's done. But I would say, like, that's why I said Wonder Woman Dead Earth. I feel like that bridges the gap because it's kind of different. It's not
Yeah.
something you would expect. The Question by Jeff Lemire that he did, and Dennis Cowan. I wouldn't say it's a modern classic, because I don't think it is for everybody. But it deals with like death, which is kind of interesting, and like it's I think it's something that maybe you should check out because it's
Hmm.
not tied to any superhero stuff. But yeah, I think overall my thoughts on like must reads, that it changes too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that like things I thought were must reads when I was like, if you asked me 10 years ago, probably would be different than what my must reads are now. And part of it is because some of those stories didn't exist, back then
Yeah.
when on my must reads. But there's like stuff that did exist back then that was on my must reads that's not anymore. Like there's just stuff that like I read it again and I'm like, I think I was just too young. I was young, you know what I mean? Like I think
Yeah.
it's just like you get older too, and your experiences in life change it. Like I think that for me, if you can, you know what, that's what it is. I think if you can read a story multiple times and gain different experiences from it, to me that's a classic. To me that's a must read. Saga, I've read multiple times and I get something different each time I read that story, and something different resonates with me. And I
Hmm.
think that is that I think that's like a true testament to the quality of a story and what makes it essential. You
Yeah.
know?
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. And so that's all I got. I think that's all you got. And I hope you guys enjoy it. We would both love to hear your opinions, what you think are must reads. Let us know if you like Sandman. If you hate Sandman, like make a fake
We want
profile.
to know.
Yeah, make a fake profile. Throw that down in the comments. And if you're not already following us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. You can follow Jen at Life of a Geeky Mind on Instagram. And like, follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are also available on Podbean, Spotify, and iTunes. And hit the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video goes up. And on that note, we're out.